been against that the whole time. Now, if an adult, maybe a 25-year-old, wants to do something to their body, change their sex, that's fine for them to do it. But I think there are some things that people should be able to do and not be within your framework. And that's what evolves us. That's what moves us forward.
A changing standard, a changing ethical standard. And because of that, you end up with absolute chaos. And here's the thing that's so funny about this, right? You made a bold claim there, which is ridiculous. We'd be living under a Christian dictatorship. Sir, we've had Christian monarchs for most of human history, at least known human history, during the biggest technological advances that we had since the Industrial Revolution, right? You claim that there's some kind of sort of anti-progress with Christianity when you clearly know that the historic standard is that there's been tons of progress under Christian ethical leadership all over the world for years and years and years, thousands of years, in fact. The idea that we curtail technology when it's indeed Christian scientists often who propel technology and used to propel technology and were funded by large Christian institutions, the Catholic Church and others. They just also have oughts to use as scientific progression towards something useful. Hey, that's great. We can empirically determine that you're hungry. That doesn't tell us what we should do about that. That's where you need to have the church. You need to have these types of grounded ethical foundations come in and say, well, we ought to feed you. Right? Well, that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to go ahead and feed you. And so that's what they do. They're able to make these societal prescriptions. You can't even decide whether or not, men can be women and women can be men. It's you create chaos inside of the very ethos of stability.
We can decide that. Men can be women and women can be men. It just happens to be that we need to take that 20% that we don't agree with and go out into the world with that and start experimenting, start evolving.
No, they can't.
Understand why we can't have this framework you're talking about.
Men can't be women, and women can't.
Oh, of course they can be men. You can totally change DNA, and we're all good. There's going to be all sorts of possibilities here within 5 or 10 years.
Sir, let me ask you something. Scientifically speaking, right? If a man puts on a wig and cuts off his penis and declares himself a woman, is he?
No, but that's not what I'm exactly talking about. What I'm talking about is the genetic engineering that we're going to be able to do here. Probably already they're experimenting with it, where you just take real gene therapies where you can actually grow a uterus in a male body. These things will take place here. They're going to take place in your lifetime.
First of all, I'm not willing to grant you the technological future that you foresee. There's no reason for me to grant this to you for the purpose of this debate, especially considering the fact of how many times there's been supposed technocratic revolutions in technology coming, and they were big flops. Right now, I should be in a flying car with all digital currency, and my Bitcoin should be worth $1 billion. But guess what?
You can be. There are flying cars, and there's digital currencies that can buy you anything these days.
No, here's the truth. The truth is that these technologies are not so nearly advanced as we've been led to believe. We don't have self-driving vehicles because we can't make machines smart enough to self-drive. They can't make decisions the way that they should. They can't tell whether or not they should swerve left at the right time.
I just want to say, do you think that a male within a 100-year time frame will be able to grow a uterus in themselves and give birth? Do you think that will scientifically happen?
I think that you may be able to make genetic modifications to a person where they can have a uterus inside of them, but that doesn't mean that they'll be able to birth children because of it. It will end up being something more akin to a cosmetic defect, or a cosmetic thing. For instance, in nature itself, there are things called chimeras, human beings who are chimeras. Chimera being a person who has two primary sex organs, male and female sex organs. Interestingly enough, though, the reason we know sex is a binary biologically is because of chimeras. Only one of those reproductive pathways is ever actually viable, meaning a chimera can't have sex with themselves, impregnate themselves, and have children with themselves. It's not possible to do.
You're bringing up animals in the 21st century.
No, I'm talking about humans.
It doesn't even work.
That's humans. Human chimeras. So the thing is like biologically, only one reproductive pathway is viable. And that's with males who have uteruses. This idea, so we have biological anomalies we can point to right now where just through freak accidents of biology, we have seen these things occur and they're not reproductively viable. There's no reason for me to assume that technologically we're going to be so advanced that men are going to be able to grow uteruses and have children.
We're coming to an age when we're going to print out anything and anyone and any type of thing we want. I mean, literally probably within 20 or 30 years. So we're definitely going to be able to print out something that combines anything and everything. And that's just the fact that everybody that's in genetic editing just sort of has to accept, is that we're coming to an age when you and I will be able to shift things probably within a 24-hour period, maybe within a 2-minute period. And that's because of drugs, DNA, nanotechnology, whatever it is. And I think Christians are going to have to say, okay, you spoke about this in your intro, like the hybrid and zombieism. Okay, this is true. I get it. It has real negative connotation, but it is coming. I mean, the idea that I can chop off an arm and grow another arm is literally right around the corner. They're already doing it now with
No, it's not.
We're going to grow a second brain, a second head. It's going to be wild.
You know what's really funny about this entire ideology? I've heard you make these claims on other shows as well, and then I go and look into them, right? I go and I actually look into the claims. For instance, regrowth of limbs. You know, the scientific consensus is on the frame for regrowth of limbs somewhere around 400 years at current state. Right?
You can't be serious telling me 400 years. Listen, AI is about to be super intelligence in 18 months.
Yeah, see, this is another
claim. Able to figure out everything very quickly. 18 months.
This is another fun claim. I want to tell you that 18 months ago, this claim was being made. Did you know that? And by the way, 18 months before that, the same claim was being made. And you know who was making it? You, sir. You, sir.
I can't believe you're
18 months ago. Hang on, sir. I want to point this out, right? Maybe I can grab the clip real quick. 18 months ago, you were on a show saying in 18 months, AI is going to take over the world, essentially. Same thing you're claiming right now. You were claiming the same thing 18 months ago.
I didn't say it's going to take over the world.
Hang on, sir, hang on. The same claim you just made that AI is going to be so advanced, it's going to be able to take over all aspects of life. We're only 18 months away. You said it 18 months ago, right? And so here we are, 18 months later.
I didn't say that. I probably said there would be AGI. And what happened last week? Japan announced that they had already achieved AGI. And now I'm saying within 18 months, we'll probably start reaching levels of early superintelligence, maybe 24 months. And I got to be honest, I'm not saying this because I just say it. I'm saying this because I met the OpenAI engineers who pulled me in a corner and were like, listen, we are much closer. We're starting to buy bunkers. We're starting to do things because we're afraid ourselves. And the claim that I made, I'm not sure which one it was about AGI, which is the equivalent of artificial intelligence to humans. And yes, that has been reached in the last few months, no matter how.
Yeah, I'm aware of the distinction between true artificial intelligence and AGI. The idea here is you have enough open nodes that you can't tell the difference, right? It basically replicates, for all intents and purposes, what you would consider artificial intelligence to be. I get that. By the way, we're not there either. And the computing power that would be required to utilize AGI right now, currently, the scientific consensus is there's not enough energy on planet Earth to hold enough nodes in order to have AGI replicate the same intelligence as a human being with all the nodes required. And so the thing is like this is mental masturbation futurism. The idea
Andrew,
here, hang on,
what you're saying is a lie. It's just not true. I mean,
true.
We have plenty enough energy for multiple AGIs. I mean, this is crazy. We have enough for a million AGIs on planet Earth. There's plenty enough power.
No. That's not what I said.
Andrew, they're working on AGI and Microsoft and Google and OpenAI. There's thousands of them.
To have an AGI which would replicate what we would consider to be artificial intelligence. That's a different claim than having AGI, which is just having X amount of node data packets that it can reference. Meaning, this is old ladder logic computing, by the way. There's nothing new under the sun here. Old ladder logic computing just works like this. Function A happens, you divert to function B. Function B happens, you divert to function C. AGI is putting that on a grander scale of nodes. It's just saying, hey, function A happens here, you divert to C. And if you add enough of those, it would make the appearance that like a robotic arm is not distinct from a human arm because it seems to function exactly the same way. The problem is once you try to move that into artificial intelligence or on par with that, that's where we have energy issues. Not only that, let me point this out. All of this stuff, this futurism that you're talking about right now, does not contend in any way, shape, or form, even if the technology was there, for how it would make the United States better. I've seen what technocrats do with this stuff.
Andrew, you're just listen, Andrew, I'm the expert on this. If we talk politics, I think I listen to some of your debates. You actually are. You know a lot more about the Constitution than me and this, that. But this is my field. These are the people that I deal with in Silicon Valley.
What did I get wrong about AGI?
I'm telling you, you're wrong. It's like,
well, what did I get wrong about AGI specifically?
And I would, if I was going to give one piece of advice to a lot of your people, I'd say start buying land, start buying cabins in the woods, because this thing is about to get crazy really quickly. And let me just say also that this is one of the problems with transhumanism right now is we've all been gung-ho on AI only to pull back about 18 or 24 months ago and say, wait a sec, AI is not human beings becoming transhuman. AI is a totally different entity. So this is where transhumanism and maybe some of your framework we can discuss again has gone off the rails because all of a sudden, I don't care. I don't want an AI to become a super intelligence. That doesn't help me or my family or my kids or my wife at all.
What did I actually get wrong about AGI and how it functions? Did I get something wrong there? I'm willing to be corrected on it, but I don't think I did. I think I'm very close.
First off, it's totally contentious whether this A to B to C can't actually create a super intelligence.
Yeah, but
maybe there's just enough information that it can do. Yes. I'm not saying that is there are other alternatives that are saying that lateral thinking has to be something different. But I'm pointing out that that's definitely open debate for all the philosophers.
So I did get that right. I did get that right for what AGI actually, in fact, is, right? I was not inaccurate there.
You didn't get it right. We're not sure yet 100% how to get to superintelligence. We've already achieved AGI through the A, B, C, D because our brains work that way. The question is, how can we take AGI and go beyond what we are? We want something super intelligent. And that's what they're working on right now. But I got to be honest, there's at least 3 different methodologies from AI engineers that seem to say we can scale to super intelligence.
Yeah, I've heard the theories there. But again, what I'm doing, unless you, when I gave you the function, the idea of having like nodes, and then these nodes have X amount of functions, which they can defer to X behavior. In this case, let's just call it behavior. It's not actually that, but behavior A, behavior B, behavior C, behavior D, function A, B, C, D, right? In a ladder logic type of way. Same way a signal light works, right? Timer hits this, it hits the next function, it moves over to yellow. It hits the next function, it moves over to red. If you had enough of these inside of a web, it would be indistinguishable from how an artificial intelligence would actually function in real time. What am I getting wrong there? That is what AGI is it not?
It is indeed, but the question I was bringing up is how do we get to superintelligence? And that's what they're working on right now. And I think if you take the capacity of this A to B kind of logic you've taken, that's sort of how our brains work. That's how we're coming up with memories. You and I are having this conversation right now. But the problem is really scaling it upwards. That's what's more controversial. But like I said, there are 3 methodologies. People are working, and I got to say, there are trillions of dollars going into developing this. And I'm not saying I'm even necessarily for it because I am a little bit afraid of AI superintelligence.
Yeah, I heard it.
But we're further advanced than I think you can give credit for.
I don't. Well, here's the thing, right? I've been hearing this for years. The idea of a technological panic, sir, is nothing new. You remember Y2K? That was another form of technological panic. The computers were going to reset. We needed to make the Y2K compliant software immediately or else. And what was that in actuality? It was a bunch of futurists who were scamming massive corporations into fixing problems which didn't even actually exist. The thing is that I hear this all the time. I hear that there's the next futuristic problem based on technology that needs to be solved immediately. It has to be because it's right around the corner. When in fact, the doomsday scenario is not right around the corner, and it's usually promoted by people, right, who have something to gain by it, by ringing the alarm bell that, hey, right around the corner, this catastrophe is right there, when in fact it's not. I have seen no great evidence that artificial intelligence we're anywhere near actual AI. Only theories that AGI could possibly or potentially replicate what artificial intelligence would be. But none of that, even if I concede all of this point that AI is right around the corner, right? Inside of the United States, how would it be helpful for us to abandon the Christian framework for a transhumanist one in order to combat that? How?
Well, let me just say that you can already go out and get softwares that would literally be answering your questions almost identically as you are now, and me doing that. And we actually don't even have to be in here in person. But the point is that the technology is radically expanding. And I think I just want to give your viewers my perspective, which is it's a lot faster, coming faster than most people say. But listen, I got to be honest, this is where I worry about my own personal philosophy. Transhumanism has taken us to the next level where we are able to create AI. But if it dooms humanity and does something because there is a very real possibility there could be a Terminator scenario. And if humans don't survive, then obviously transhumanism and my ideology and scientific method and whatnot have failed. and yours would have been more successful. Yours might be a safer bet right now, because I don't think many Christians would want to give birth to artificial intelligence, especially not a super intelligence, because it just doesn't fit with their framework. That said,
yeah, but
if it does work in our favor, we might have this great utopia, get off planet, be able to cure cancer, and become superhumans. And that's really the goal of a lot of transhumanists. But again, it's a wager, it's a bet, and we don't know.
But do you see
we don't
how
know
you're
whether it's going to
deferring?
turn out good or not.
Do you see how, interestingly enough, when push comes to shove, you divert to my ethical worldview and not me yours? The idea here is,
well, it
that,
could be Buddhism,
on,
it could be Hinduism, it could be Islam. I mean, it could be any view.
Hang on, but it's not those views. It's actually a deference to Christian ethics. Those
No, I would defer to Buddhism just personally.
Those are the ethics which you were raised with, and this and that, right? And there's things about Buddhism. There's things about Buddhism you probably wouldn't like as much as Christianity. But that aside, leaving that aside,
nihilism is where I would end up with. But
yeah, but
that's,
hang on.
That's how it is.
If it's the case that Terminators, let's say, due to transhumanists, Terminators did come around. We had a Sarah Connor type situation, absent the time travel. Okay, no time travel, just warbot machines who came in and decided to repurpose us by, against our will, cutting our skulls open and putting our brains in these machines, which can then live forever, right? It's really interesting to me because that would be a transhumanist future, 100% transhumanist future. But it's a future you seem to want to avoid, and I don't understand why. It gives you everything that you want. Technology then removes the idea of death. It is now gone. And yet somehow you still prefer my framework that this needs to be stopped. Hang on, that this needs to be stopped by any means necessary, even though it meets all of the conditionals of your framework. You have now, sir, under this Terminator-like apocalypse where they cut your brain out and put it in a machine, have achieved the very thing you want, and yet you still don't seem to want it. It's very strange to me.
Listen, if that machine is me, that doesn't want to die, that loves life, loves his family, loves humanity, has mammalian instincts, then I would take that machine. But if it is that machine, it's not going to end up.
We're supposed to transcend those things. Humanity. What do you mean? We're supposed to transcend the mammalian instincts. We're supposed to transcend humanity.
I've never said transhumanism wants to transcend mammalian instincts. Absolutely not. I don't want to transcend a lot of the things that I have evolved with over millions of years.
Why do you want to keep your humanity? So you want to keep your humanity intact?
Yes. I certainly don't want to ever forget about my family. I mean, maybe there are some transhumanists out there who are like these crazy wackos that just want to become super godlike or whatever. But I actually want to take all my history with me and just become this person that can live indefinitely, take my family with me, see what's in the universe out there, and have this amazing epic journey of exploration.
That's not transcending your humanity. It seems that your ethical system is demanding that humanity stay intact. When you talk about things like mammalian instincts, yeah,
the best parts of humanity
should be
kept.
Let me at least respond. The best parts by whose metric? These are arbitrary metrics that you came up with. What makes them the best? Just because you like them? The thing is that
and just because an individual likes them.
Yes. So the thing is that if individuals didn't like them, let's say, and they said, we're gonna cut your brain open and put it in a machine, whether you like it or not, you have now achieved your goal of immortality. You have transcended your mammalian instincts. You've transcended your very humanity, the very thing that you claimed, which was using technology for immortality. Definitionally, this is what you want.
This is like the oil barrel thing
humanity.
You're talking about sort of slavery. If I'm not in charge of it, if I'm not happy with what's happening with my transhuman evolution, then it doesn't work for me. Transhumanism is something that re-emphasizes my love of life. If I can't re-emphasize my love of life, then I don't want the philosophy.
Do you see here then, you're not actually trying to transcend humanity at all. What you're trying to do instead is you have like an oppositional worldview here. It's very bizarre. On the one hand, you say that you're willing to transcend all of the human elements for the purpose of immortality. And yet, when the conditional is presented, hey, this could actually happen. Let's say that we grant this transhumanist future where the Terminators cut your brain out and just put it in a Terminator. You still think like you still talk like you still do all of those things. But the things that made you human, those mammalian instincts, these various things that you are attached to emotionally, those are gone, right? You say, no, I don't want to detach from these things. The very core things that ontologically make us human, I don't want to detach from. That is giving us great evidence here that the Christian ethical system is the deference that you use in order to make these claims in society at all. You're deferring to my worldview, never me yours.
But I've already said I like 80% of your worldview. I just said it's the 20% that's going to make us evolve and grow.
All right,
and
what's
the
the
same thing's
20% you
happening
don't
here.
like?
I like being a human being. I just think it's time to not necessarily have to eat every night to survive, or not necessarily have to, die of cancer. There are things we can upgrade. And I also want to get off planet. Let's get to the Star Trek.
But wait a second. It's the idea that these are not violations of Christian ethics. What is this 20% of Christian ethics that you don't like? If we had technology that would make it so that you didn't have to eat, so what? You think, how would that violate Christian ethics?
Look,
what do you mean?
I just told you, you have this idea that God gives us, but I actually don't believe in God. Therefore, I don't see that purpose. And this is that 20% that I'm missing. And it's not, like I said, it's not that I'm not invited into my life. I just don't see it. And because I don't see it, maybe I'm like Thomas putting the finger through the, Jesus' hand. I don't see it. And as long as I don't see it, I'm going to continue with my own methodology, which creates my own purpose.
Yeah, but you're not just continuing with your own methodology. You're creating prescriptions for humanity, in this case, the United States, and making the bold claim that transhumanism is a much better future for people than Christianity. And yet any time I look at the way in which you can transcend humanity, you seem to defer right back to the Christian ethic of not doing that. So it seems like the bumpers that Christians put on society with responsible technology and not attempting to play God, not attempting to move into this arena of transcending our humanity. First of all, I just want to let you know, within my worldview, it's not even possible. Right? It's not even a logical possibility. I don't even think immortality is a logical possibility from my worldview. So from your worldview, I understand that it is, and I'm trying to contend with that, right? But to me, it's not even logically possible. And when we're talking about prescriptions, especially here in the United States, right, the idea of, moving towards just the axiom of immortality is not helpful prescriptively to any of the social institutions, any of the family institutions you love so much, any of the prescriptive institutions that you like so much. So what is it that you're giving us here? And what is Christianity holding you back from? You can be a transhumanist. Who's saying you can't? Who's saying that you can't? You can go right now and do all sorts of experiments on your own brain and try to find the elixir of life. Nobody cares. No one's trying to stop you. What is Christianity even holding you back from here?
Listen, there are plenty of Christian transhumanists out there, just so your audience knows. Look, we think that 20% that we came to is what's really important. That's how somebody like myself and the species itself continues to evolve into something different. And we agree that sometimes when you deviate, that 20% can fail. That 20% can lead you to some terrible things.
20%? What 20%?
But that 20% also lifts us up. That's lifted us
up
from the Enlightenment, from the Dark Ages, from all these other things. We need to evolve off that. We always need to have that opening. And unfortunately, in your worldview, there can be no opening like that. We need to be able to do crazy, wild things as a species in order to evolve. And that's where I come in.
What are these crazy things we need to do as a species that violate this supposed 20% of Christianity that you are just demanding society has? What are they? What?
Men having babies. Something I know you don't like, but let's go for it. Why can't we do that? But it's not just that. It's why can't we get to the Star Wars era where people have tails? I have a third eye in the back of my head. I have two heads. I mean, whatever it is to be functional from a materialistic point of view on planet Earth and beyond, those are the things transhumanism want to do. I don't want to die. Yeah. So that's going to be my main priority. Well, how can I reverse aging?
Yeah, let's start with this. Let's start with the idea of men having children, right? Let's just explore this potential future, right? I don't grant that it's even.
And let me just say, I would be one of those men that would like to do it in the future as well.
Got it. You want to be a man who has children. I understand. But let us actually explore this. Do you agree with me that men, on average, are much, much stronger than women are biologically?
Yes, and they shouldn't be in the women men shouldn't be in women's sports as well. So let me just say that. So we're on the same page.
I'm not even going there yet. I just want to try to explore this concept a little bit. So because of that, men generally are the dominant force in society. They usually have to be, because the strength which is required in order to govern the laws of society and the force which is necessary in order to maintain order comes primarily from men, whether it's military, law enforcement, things like this. Now, you could maybe equalize that with technology. I'm not saying you can't. We'll just leave that for a different conversation. But let us assume for a moment that men could actually have children, that we could. And then we had sophisticated, I'm guessing if we had sophisticated enough technology to grow wombs inside of men and then they could have kids, that we would have very sophisticated sex robots as well. Can you tell me what the fuck we would need women for anymore?
Why do you keep asking why we need them? We want them just because we love them.
Why would we want them? For what?
Because they're wonderful.
What's wonderful about them?
We have mammalian instincts. We're going to love as many
those
people
mammalian
as we can.
instincts. Hang on. If men could have children themselves,
you're a complete functionalist. I feel like in the deep
I'm not a
complete
functionalist. I'm pointing this out. This is a very important truth. In China, they had a one-child policy. Which child was the one that was most likely to die? The male or the female?
Yeah, I know.
It was the female, right? The reason is because the idea of if you could choose, this is a great social experiment for the human condition, isn't it? The idea here is if you could choose between the stronger sex, who appears to at least be more rational, has less likely to have emotional breakdowns, they're actually just easier to deal with ultimately, and you get more use out of them. And when you move into the selfish nature of humanity, that often is the case, they have to choose between men and women, they choose men. And that's exactly what they did inside of China. It was so bad, in fact, that the extermination protocol was so bad that you ended up with such a lopsided condition of men versus women. They actually ended up having to stop the program because it crippled their birth rates. But here, right, if we were pointing this out, if men could have their own children and you didn't need women for that, and you could have sex robots for a carnal need, why wouldn't that just actually lead to the extinction of the female sex? There's no good reason. Can you give me a single reason why it would be that men would want to have women if they're, I mean, absent what? Some emotional connection? They don't need to have sex with them. They don't need to reproduce with them. They don't need to do anything with them. Why wouldn't women just become second-class citizens?
No, just because we like them, we get along with them. And you have to understand, like, I don't actually even
Most
see
of the
a
world
lot
we
of this
don't.
male-female stuff. You keep, wanting to designate something. But listen, Andrew, if you had a baby, you had a womb inside you, and you gave birth, I wouldn't necessarily designate you as like a female or male, or you can't have friends with females because they're not functional. Listen,
I'm not designating
I would just
any such
respect your decision to want to have this child on your own for whatever reasons. And you could still be part of a family. You might just do it because your body loves to do it. I think it's fantastic.
But when we're talking about social dynamics, which you seem to be leaving out of this, which is very strange because you have a compelling writing style when you explore characters. I know that you understand human social interactions and how they tend to operate. It is in fact the case that if men could find a robot replication of a woman, which is down to the finest detail, a woman for all intents and purposes, physically, mentally, everything else like this, artificial, sure, right? But makes the sandwich, shuts the mouth, watches the TV, the man can have the kids. Why wouldn't that naturally lead towards males selecting for other males in their own birth form? What would be the incentive of men to select for females if they could give birth themselves? What would be the incentive to do that? It would be like creating a less strong, less rational human being on purpose. Why would they do it?
Listen, this is where your framework would say no, not to do this because of the greater God thing that's out there. But transhumanists would say, listen, it's okay if all of a sudden maybe the female entity is not necessary. But the females are going to have their own situation, and they're going to say, now we don't need males. But this is the transhuman future where people can make these individual choices based on liberty, based on their personal preferences as we move forward and see what we evolve into. And I just don't think we need to be so afraid of that. I'm not afraid of it at all. I think it could be wonderful. And listen, I'm a totally normal guy. I'm a heterosexual guy. I got a wife. I got 2 young daughters. I have a great family life. Everything's perfect. But I can see in 100 or 200 years, maybe something deviates. Maybe I try something completely new. I think that's okay to try something new. I think on planet Earth, as these very sophisticated human beings that might become transhuman entities, we can start looking out there and say, what's next? What can we do?
Yeah, listen, the reason I brought up social interactions is because when you're talking about power dynamics between humans, the reason that women are so valuable in society is because of what reason, sir? What is the primary reason men lay down their lives? Why the women get the lifeboats first? What is the primary reason that women have any value in society? Not just here, by the way. We can look at the world where women are severely oppressed, and over half of it or more, right? Why do they even keep them around? Why do they even allow them anything? It's because they're revered only for one purpose, which is a reproductive purpose. And the problem with this is, like, you don't look at the sorts of entailments, the sorts of social entailments, which you can run into by allowing, even if this were possible, which I don't even grant it is, but for the sake of the argument, I will. The entailment here would actually likely lead to there not being any more females, because men would select for men. Why wouldn't they? They're way less maintenance. They're way easier to deal with, and they can reproduce heirs for you now. And on top of that, right, they're much stronger, meaning they're much more useful inside of a family dynamic. Your future does not look great for women.
Look, I get it, Andrew. I get it. I get what the problem is here. You're really stuck on the male and female. The transhuman future may not have male or female anymore, and it may be for the best. And I'm happy to endorse that idea to move beyond that. And this is why one of the things when it comes to transgenderism, things like that, transhumanists are just open arms. We just are way beyond that. Some human beings might want to become fish. They might want to become mini unicorns, mini dinosaurs, whatever it is. If we have liberty and we have this technology, then we may want to do those things. As long as it's not kind of offending the golden rule of hurting somebody else, then I think it's absolutely okay to move beyond.
Can you show me?
Females
can you show me where technology? Where has technology assisted with liberty? That's that. By the way, I've heard this take from you multiple times. I heard it on InfoWars as well when you were being interviewed there. And the question came up, and you sidestepped it. You didn't actually answer to it, but I went back and I did a little bit of a review. Everything that you brought up, from automobiles as being freedom machines and things like this. But of course, you didn't ever provide the counter, which is, well, automobiles in the state hands actually led to less freedom ultimately. The idea of the surveillance state led to less freedom ultimately. The idea of having these mass tracking systems via digital computerization led to less freedoms with people's personal firearm ownership. It's led to less privacy for people. It's led to all sorts of horrible outcomes. Technology, in fact, has not led to increased freedom in human beings at all, not even a little bit. It led to decreased freedom for human beings. Every account that I can see leads to a decreased freedom. Now, you can offset this and you can say, wait a second, what about things like medical technology and stuff like this? Sure. If that was all the entailment was that, hey, we're going to get great medical technology and cure leukemia, I'd be all for that. But the thing that's interesting here is, like, in this particular case, all of these technologies you're talking about, can you tell me any of them that have led to more freedom for people, that where the entailment hasn't actually been more oppression for people? Because I can't think of any, actually.
It's really hard. This is kind of like me trying to understand your framework for God when I don't believe it. I just don't understand it. But listen, I can jump on a plane. I'm going to Kazakhstan to give a speech. I'm going to go be skiing. I mean, the point is, the freedom is crazy. It's all around us. We can do everything we want now well, not everything. Obviously, in 100 years, we can do a lot more. But we have so much more freedom. We don't die from a cavity anymore, which most people used to die from, or at least quite often. And now we have technologies to overcome this dictatorship of, let's just say, cavities. But it's just a sample, it's a metaphor of all the different types of things that we can do now. I can jump in a car right now and drive all the way up to wherever, or get on a plane and go surfing in Hawaii tomorrow morning. The freedoms are crazy. It's all over. Digital currency, whatever it is.
This is classic equivocation. You're mixing up ability with freedom. I agree that you now have the ability to travel to other places via technology, not the freedom to do so. The freedom to do that is granted by your government. Ultimately, that is where your freedom is coming from to do any of those things. Air traffic control, for instance, whose hands is that in? Whose hands is most of the airports in, with TSA and other things like this? Whose tracking software is utilizing all of that? You're mixing up and equivocating. You're saying ability and freedom, which are two completely different things. I'm not negating that there's the ability there through technology for you to jump on an airplane and conceivably go wherever the hell you want, just like you could get on a horse and go wherever the hell you wanted, or whatever. Right? The ability to do those things. The technology itself, though, has not led to this ability being in some way ingrained or non-curtailed or things like this. Your ability to travel seems to be granted to you. And the fact of the matter is you can be surveilled 24 hours, 7 days a week now through these technologies where they can curtail this ability immediately. They make a notation in a system, you're depersoned. You're depersoned, you're debanked, you're deplaned, your flight status is revoked, you have wrong think, you're out of the system.
But the technology allowed me to do it in the first place. Even if you're right, I agree with you. The government can stop us any day, and that presents a problem that I bet you and I both agree on. But the truth is that because we have this technology, we can do all these different types of things that were once unavailable to us. In my opinion, it's really kind of unimaginable that you would argue that technology has lessened our own personal freedoms. That seems pretty crazy.
It seems like again we're back to equivocation. In what ways has technology itself advanced freedom? It has not. It's advanced ability. Freedom is a philosophical concept. Freedom is a concept which is ingratiated in the philosophical and the spiritual and the ontology of man himself. It is not ingrained in any sort of technological jargon, babble, or a material object. You are mixing up ability to do a thing, right, with the philosophical purview of a freedom to do a thing. It doesn't matter if you have the ability to get on a plane and leave. All that matters is whether or not you have the freedom to even do it to begin with, right? That is where you're mixing these two concepts up. And so, well, what I want from you is for you to show me during the advancement of any of these technologies, how that philosophical concept has improved in people's lives, because it hasn't. You were just as free to get into a classic automobile as you are right now and drive under the same philosophical framework. If they had airplanes in 1840, you would have been just as free to get on those and go travel around as well. However, as technology and tracking software has increased, your freedoms to do those things has decreased drastically. So that's what I'm asking is like, how is that not the case? How is it not the case that your freedoms are drastically curtailed through this technological revolution? Because it doesn't seem like we have more freedom.
I find it's crazy. We're talking on podcasts. I'm not sure what country you're in or where you're at, but we're like, there's so much freedom all around us compared to like 50 years ago. Now, I agree with you. The actual concept of freedom itself is kind of an innate concept from a philosophical point of view. Maybe that has not changed, but the ability to use material objects around us to do all sorts of brand new things, like do this telecast without having to meeting in person. This has given us an enormous amount of freedom in the material world. So I completely believe in it, subscribe to it, and think it's wonderful. I mean, I can't believe that you're actually arguing that technology is limiting freedom.
I can't believe that you're making this argument. You understand philosophy. This argument makes no sense. You're confusing ability again with freedom. Yes, I agree. We now have abilities we've never had before via technology. That is not the idea of freedom. Are you really going to seriously argue that human beings in America are more free now than they were in like 1850, 1860?
Of course, my God.
Because they have the ability to drive to the
freedom away from being cold. And so people have that. Hot water is from vaccines that you don't get like measles and
freedom away from being cold?
Look, these are all oppression on us. The biological, and this is important. The biological body is terminal, and it's just this it's a dictator essentially holding us all the time down. And what we have done, transhumanists and technology moving forward, has made it so that we can live easier. We can survive cavities. We can have hot water in the winter. We can have housing when there's giant snowstorms. I mean, we are improving day by day, and even the poorest of us in America have dramatically more freedoms and abilities to do things that they never would have done. People going national parks thousands of miles away, even if they're just living on the dole.
Yeah, this is a bad argument because you're mixing up ability with freedom itself. Your idea here is like, because I can now flip on the cell phone and have a conversation with somebody thousands of miles away, that entails freedom. Who else can do that? Prisoners who are in prison. They can also pick up the same exact phone and make a call 1,000 miles away. You know who else can board airplanes? Prisoners. You know who else can board buses? Prisoners. You know who else can do all of these things that you grant, which are abilities? Do they matter absent the freedom? They don't. Would you argue, for instance, that you're free because you're on an airplane as a prisoner being flown to a different prison? Hang on. I just let you go. The answer is, of course not. Your freedom is still being curtailed, regardless of the ability for you to get from A to B. This is the whole problem with this philosophy that you have. You're mixing up and equivocating between ability and freedom. That's one. And two, you still haven't actually told us at all how any repudiation of Christian ethics or what this 20%, how is men having children going to improve the conditionals of the relationships of people in the United States? It's not. What should we sacrifice in Christian ethics in order to give you your magic wand so men can have children in the U.S.? What should we do? Like, you see what I mean? Prescriptively, yeah, it's nonsense. It's just babble. You haven't actually told us what the prescriptions for the U.S. are, how it's better without Christian ethics in it, or even this 20% you're talking about. How is that better?
Well, I think the 20% is really, really critical, because I feel like what's happening is you want to hold back liberal society from doing these experiments that move us forward. And these things have moved us forward through every single decade, every single generation. And if you keep holding us back, like you're going to hold us back from the transhuman future, then we're never going to get to that transhuman future. And we're going to continue to die from cancer and Alzheimer's and whatnot. So we need
Nobody's
that 20%
holding you back from
in order so that we can kind of achieve this greater stature of society, and transhumanists can kind of reach out and become the beings that they want to be.
There's no serious Christian organization anywhere I'm aware of who's trying to hold you back from doing leukemia cancer research or anything regarding cancer or its cure, right?
It's not just scientific or medicinal. I mean, it has to do with social structures as well.
Yeah.
Why don't you want to have a baby is what I want to know. Why don't you want to have a baby?
Well, I don't think that it's even possible for my worldview. It's not even a logical possibility.
Why don't you want to? Why, if you could, would you not think at least, that would be an interesting thing? This is the crux that I want to get to with you.
Because what you're doing is you're trying to attack the ontology of what is man, what is woman, right? The very idea here that you think that forming some sort of uterus inside of me, where would the baby come from, by the way? Like, let's just say that I could grow a uterus. Does the baby come out of my ass? Where does the baby come out of?
I don't know. Maybe we'll make you a new vagina. But the point of the story is not that. It's the cultural problem that you're presenting.
What you're doing is violating ontology. What you're trying to do.
Yes, we are violating it. That's okay.
Exactly.
It's totally okay.
And so the idea, though, prescriptively here, right, we can have, if we're looking at the two opposing views, right, do you, the man, are you going to get pregnant and then have an artificial vagina and all the reproductive organs?
Sure.
They're going to be implanted inside of you.
Or you can regrow them through genetic editing.
replicating female anatomy. This is an improvement on society. How is this an improvement? This is the problem. Like, why ought I do that? That's the whole question. And why we come down to this violation is because I believe in ontology. You don't.
Because you want to, because somebody wants to. Why is that wrong to want to do something like that?
Because, well, you have no epistemic foundation in which to ground the ought.
To want to have a child? I mean, that's as core as it gets.
That's as core as what gets. There is no, what is the ought?
No, a desire of something to do such. I mean, why can't a man want to, I'm just saying this philosophically.
I'll tell you, hang on. We'll get into the philosophy then. Why can't I then have that baby and torture it while it remains immortal for the rest of its life? Why can't I?
Well, we have laws against that. We're not talking about torture.
We have laws
bringing
against
something beautiful into the world.
You can't say that you're appealing to the law in a philosophical debate, right? You and I both know that there's all sorts of unjust laws, right? That you would view as unjust, I would view as unjust. Who cares? You can't appeal to the law. That's insane. Tell me why it is that I ought not, if I desire it, just like I desire to have a baby, why ought I not, if it's immortal, just spend the rest of my life torturing it because I think it's really fun?
Well, I mean, I think transhumanists would say there are some innate laws, maybe that 80% that we stole from you, that wouldn't allow us to do that. But the 20% would allow us to say, here's another soul that Jesus can find and save. What is wrong with that?
So what you're saying is that the reason you can't do it, Andrew, is because Christian ethics, the very guardrails put on the entire society that I want to see, my transhumanist future is not even possible without Christian ethics, Andrew, because otherwise I can't give you a descriptive ought for why you ought not go ahead and just torture this baby for the rest of its existence, and it's immortal, so it can just take it. Right? Why ought I not do that?
You're upset because I find that 20% I can do whatever I want with, and I love that idea.
You're not telling me why
you're not going to let me go with that.
You're not telling me why I ought not do that. You're just making an appeal, right, to me. You're only making an appeal to me. Andrew, you ought not do that because your moral framework, which apparently must be superior to your own, because that's what you're appealing to. You're not appealing to your own moral framework. Why ought I not, from your moral framework, torture a baby endlessly if it was immortal? And I could.
Well, going back to what I said before, if you love life and you have a million instincts, you're not going to want to torture something that's one of your own. But that's beside the point. The point is, why can't I take
that's not oughts. You're giving me descriptors now, not oughts. I'm asking you from your moral framework, yours, Zoltan Istvan, what is actually immoral about doing that other than you just prefer that I don't? What appeal are you making to something, a stance independent reason, independent of Zoltan?
Absolutely. Transhumanists would believe in a social contract that's been talked about for centuries. And one of those contracts is kind of the golden rule. You don't do something terrible to somebody that you wouldn't want done to yourself. I mean, and then again, I'm borrowing the 80% from Jesus. I think it's okay.
You're borrowing my worldview because your worldview can't actually exist absent mine, but mine can exist.
But you can't actually take the 20% of the worldview where I'm trying to evolve into something else.
You have not made any compelling arguments for what this 20% of the worldview even is. You just said, what about having children? I say, okay, well, let me grant for a second that I can have children and they're going to be immortal. They're going to live forever, right? They're going to have wounds that heal instantaneously. Why, Zoltan, from your transhumanist perspective, if I grabbed a soldering iron, just burned its eyeballs out every 5 minutes because it just brought me tons of joy and desire, why ought I not do that other than, well, because you just don't want me to? Why?
No, I just told you we have social contracts. We don't do bad things to people.
What if
the
social contract? What if the social contract changes because preferences change?
And it will.
So that I can do that.
It will. It might not be 80% of Christianity. It might be 60 or 40% or even less someday. But we're gonna retain our mammalian instincts. We're not gonna end up taking a soldering iron to children's eyes.
We can transcend our mammalian instincts. And by the way, even within the confines of the mammalian instincts, you have psychopaths. And the thing is like, so here's the idea. The idea is really simple. And you're not actually answering to this at all. Why is it that if every 5 minutes soldering iron burn out the retinas, right? They grow right back. Baby screams in agony, blood's everywhere, but that's okay. It reproduces inside of their system almost instantaneously. The social contract has changed. It's 300 years in the future. People think this is fun. They think it's hilarious. They think it's great. What does Zoltan appeal to then? The social contract has changed.
The scientific method is going to say, why are we doing that? We're not just hedonists.
The scientific
method into something. We want to.
The scientific method can't make claims like that. The scientific method.
You're making us transhumanists out to sound like madmen. It's not like that. We're going to try to find utopias. We're not going to put soldering iron in children's eyes. We're always going to take what we have now, our social contract, and become better human beings. We're going to probably take your 80% and stick with it, I bet.
That's ridiculous. We don't see that anywhere. Where first of all, when you say the social contract, right? Whose? The USSR's?
No, yours, you're 80%.
Hang on. North Korea's? Do you want the Middle Eastern social contract? Do you want a Western Enlightenment social contract? There's not even a universalized social contract now. But to say that it wouldn't change even in the Western nations is fucking crazy. I mean, it is. It's just, that's an objectively insane thing to say. But on top of all of that, you still haven't actually provided for me. And you said the scientific method's going to ask why you're doing that. The scientific method doesn't do that. It doesn't ask those questions.
Yes,
those
it does.
No, hang on.
Of course it does.
It does not ask the question of
it wants to know why you're doing anything.
And no, what science does is this. You make an observation about something which is material. That's what you do. And then you come up with a hypothesis as to why that's happening. This material thing is happening. In this case, science could make this claim. It could say, the soldering iron in the baby's eye causes it pain. It can't give you a moral prescription for why you ought not cause that baby pain. Do you understand the distinction? And so here, when you make an appeal to science, right, it's absurd, especially philosophically. What is the actual foundation from Zoltan for why it is that if Andrew Wilson had a man baby that came out of his butt and started burning its retinas out because I thought it was funsies, what is actually the issue there from you? You can't appeal.
Yeah,
hang on.
Transhumanism wouldn't allow it. We wouldn't allow suffering of somebody else.
Why
like
though?
That at all?
Why? What are you
Well,
basing that
because
on
we
other
took
than your
80%
preference?
of your philosophy that
Right.
which doesn't allow it.
So you just appealed to me again. Your whole
Yes,
appeal
I
is
told you already we're taking 80%, but that
Yeah.
20%,
So your
that's not
entire-
involved your soldering
Yeah.
iron thing.
So your entire appeal for why Christianity isn't good for the United States and transhumanism is because we need Christianity to stop people from doing things that you are going to create the technology for them to be able to do. Genius argument, Zoltan.
It's perfect. It's like evolution. You pull the best parts and you leave behind the boring parts or the parts that don't work. And that's exactly what transhumanism is. I can't believe you don't want to support me. I'm taking 80% of your philosophy.
You're making the epistemic claim of best. Best is an epistemic claim. What makes that the best other than you just prefer it? Nothing, right? Nothing makes it the best other than you just prefer that. And so we're back to Zoltan's preferences. If Zoltan thinks we shouldn't do this because we shouldn't do this, it's tautological. You shouldn't do it because you shouldn't do it because you shouldn't do it. And then he moves over and says, but the main reason I can give you for not doing it is because of Christianity and Andrew's worldview, which I'm here arguing is objectively worse somehow than my worldview, yet appealing to it for the things I don't want you to do.
I'm
just quickly, fellas, before we carry on, just quickly, guys, just quickly.
I'm asking you to open up that 20%, and then we'll be in the same ballpark.
Hold on a second. We're going to go for about another 10, 15 minutes or so. So if there's anything really pressing that you guys want to talk about towards the end,
there is another
do that. And then we'll go 2 minutes or so on the closings, and then we'll read out super chats, which are going to be orange and above. So
by the way, I enjoy spirited debates. I don't take any of this stuff personally, by the way. I never have.
Okay, me neither.
Yeah.
It's wonderful talking to you, Andrew, actually.
Yeah. I never have taken any of this stuff personally. I think that there's a form of entertainment that comes with debating. And I'm very good at debating my view. That's what I'm here to do. And I'm here to represent it well. So there's, if this is an excited debate or things like this, or we're yelling at each other or things like that, you don't have to worry about it. You're more than welcome to come back to debate anytime.
I'm actually honored to hear you debate, because I can see that this is a whole different type of debate than I'm used to in the academic world.
Yeah, I understand that too. And I think sometimes these get to more of the core issues than some of the quote academic debates, which I've been involved in many of those as well. And most of the time they're just kind of stodgy and boring. But back to this, there was one other thing that I kind of wanted to get at here that I do think is important, which is that, prescriptively, when we're talking about what I want to see for my nation, what I want to see for my country, when you're talking about like these mammalian instincts, things which are ingrained inside of us as human beings, don't you think that the idea of like countrymen and people groups and things like that are important to those mammalian instincts? So why is it that you would make the claim that you would want to transcend those things, even though those are as much a part of our mammalian instincts of in-group preference and things like this as anything else are? And yet you seem to even in this category pick and choose which things we should or should not be attached to. And I don't see any justification for that either.
Well, first of all, I think picking and choosing is really what transhumanism is about. It's like we want the best from here, the best from there. And I know it goes against your overall Christian framework, because you kind of have your rules set, and it's like this is this, male and female, whatnot. But transhumanists are willing to pick anything and go with it. And the same thing I think is going to happen from ethnicity, from race, from whether someone has high IQ or low IQ. We're going to try to pick the very best things that move us forward. And, this is why I think transhumanists would argue that, like, let's have genetic editing of children, of babies, designer babies, because we want to put the best attributes in a child and not leave it to chance or to God's destiny. And again, this is a huge, I think, chasm between you and I, is that we want to modify everything for improvement according to the desires and what we think is best at the time.
Yeah, but do you see, though, how this doesn't contend with what I'm asking you? When you say that you don't want to transcend the kind of base mammalian things that make you a human, those things you, Zoltan, are very attached to, right? You made this very, very clear over and over in this debate. You do not want to transcend those things. You want your humanity intact. You just want it to last a really long time, right? Why is it then that you want to transcend these other base things, right? Other than preference, for instance, the idea of king and nation and nationalism and loyalty and in-group preference and the way that we respond to various people groups and the various kind of social things we see as a historic anthropological standard for humanity. So we know it's ingrained in us. Why should we transcend those things? Why do we need to do that? Why do you get to pick and choose which of these mammalian instincts are uniquely human or which ones aren't?
Yeah, well, I think first off, let me say some mammalian instincts we want to keep because, like, I can't imagine a world where I'm so transhuman that I don't want to see my children. But I think one of the more important parts of what I've been trying to say is we want to keep our memories. And the reason that we made decisions along the path, even as going back as a child, why did you do this? How did it lead to being the adult? How did it lead to this conversation with you? So I never want to forget those things. And I think when we talk about mammalian instincts, we're talking about, in my opinion, millions of years of evolution that got us to this point. And therefore, I want to start off that point as kind of the foundation for moving forward. It is very possible, though, in a 10,000 year future, we might have nothing of mammalian instincts left in us, might be completely super intelligent or something of that nature. And I'm willing to let that go as well. But I do think that memory is probably going to be something, just from a philosophical point of view, we're always going to have just so we have our foundation of who we are.
Yeah, but we're back to the Terminator analogy. If they cut your brain out against your will and stuffed it inside of a machine, you would still have your memories intact. Those don't go away. You didn't appeal to memories. You appealed instead to mammalian instincts. The idea of what made you a human being and a person to begin with was not just strictly based on memories. After all, if it was, you wouldn't even have an issue with the machine, your brain getting stuffed in the machine. You seem to be appealing to, you want to feel emotions. You want to feel human. You want to feel those animalistic principal instincts. There's something there that's very appealing to you. And so if that's the case, and I understand that, right? I get it, right? Christians definitely understand that aspect of it, right? We would separate these into virtues and vices and various things like this. But I understand, at least logically, the worldview that you would want to keep these things intact. But then why do you get to pick and choose which ones are the mammalian instincts we should go for? If the mammalian instincts are anthropologically or in-group preference are systems of order based around patriarchal systems, if this is the anthropological and evolutionary standard that we see, these are the feelings and evolution that most people feel. Why is it that you get to pick and choose those things, or should pick and choose these things in order to edit them out of society? That's the problem when you say things like designer babies. What do you get to edit out there? Which of these feelings and principles and things like this that these babies would have, why do you get to decide which of those are bad and which of those are good?
So, Andrew, let me just say, first, obviously it's not me. It would have to be done in some kind of democratic method.
Why?
And that's been a huge issue right now with ethics with designer babies. Is how do we do that? Is the government involved? Is the government conservative or is it liberal? So, I mean, I think that's something that everyone has to put their voices in and have some type of democracy establish what is going to be
okay. But contend with my question. Contend with my question. Let's pretend that you're the unilateral dictator of the United States, hypothetically. I don't know. We all democratically got together and voted you to be our king. Now you have the unilateral hand, and they come to you and say, we're going to make designer babies. How do you decide which of these attributes, which of these attributes are the human attributes which you get to edit out and which ones aren't? Bad emotions, is that a human attribute we get to edit out? Good emotions, do we get to edit those out? In-group preference, do we get to edit that out? Which of these things do you get to decide are those base inline human feelings that you desire so much to continue to keep? How do you make the decision on which of those things we get to edit out and which ones we don't? How?
Well, for starters, just going back to the very first questions we talked about, anything that kills a child, like leukemia or a trait for that,
not talking about health issues. Not talking about health issues.
The bigger question then is like, okay, how many Einsteins do we want? Do we want all Einsteins? Is that good to have all Einsteins? No, because we need some diversity. We need people to break out in different angles. And I think that's where, if I was dictator, there'd have to be a set of experts that I took my advice from, and I try to pick out what I feel is best for transcendence of the human race to get off planet and to kind of go out and dominate the universe.
What would give these, quote, experts, whatever you consider these experts to be, their expertise, what would give them the ability to discern which of these attributes, in-group preference, misogyny, let's just say misogyny or misandry or biases or racism or any of these things that a person has a predilection towards?
Right.
Well, how do they get to make the decision that
Andrew,
they
I think we
edit
would say
these things out of humans.
I think we would say, what is the ideal human being? And let's pull in all those attributes, whatever we could agree on, and say, this is the most beautiful human being. You know, like, I think obviously somebody did this with Jesus. They said, look, Jesus was a perfect person. I can give that, you know, that's fine. I would try to give all the best attributes to all the designer babies that I was trying to do in whatever framework it was. And my framework would be, I want people that are curious. I want people that are willing to go beyond boundaries, ethical boundaries. I want people to try to be as strong as they can be. I want people to be loving and take care of their loyal.
So
I mean, there are all these attributes.
Okay, so if these experts got together and they said, here are the attributes that we in our expertise have come up with. We want 6'2", white only, blonde hair, blue-eyed babies, right? The Ubermensch, as it were. Right? That's what we want for the world. And even if you're black or brown or Native American or anything like that, we're going to genetically alter your children to reflect this status of the Ubermensch. Is that okay? Should we go for that transhumanist future? Because you have allowed people, based on arbitrary metrics of what makes a person great or not great, right, to decide on what to edit out of the genome, what to edit out the bad traits. So what's wrong with the editing in the Ubermensch? What's wrong with that?
You would never do that. That wouldn't work. To have one type of person. You need the diversity. I'm completely.
For what?
We want people that are fish, let alone different races and stuff like that.
Why do you need it? It's not necessary. What are you talking about? And if they decide
it's that 20%, the 20% has to be like a big jambalaya. And what makes jambalaya great is it's just mixed in from all different parts.
It doesn't have to be. You see how you're making this as an assertion with no justification? You just say it has to be because it has to be because it has to be. It doesn't have to be. Why is it that the transhumanist designer babies can't say we only want white, blonde hair, blue-eyed Ubermenches to be born? And that's it. And we can edit the gene to get rid of whatever the black DNA traits are, whatever the Indian DNA traits are. Why can't they do that? What is actually the justify? Hang on. What is actually immoral about doing that? What?
Listen, because we have goals, and those goals involve whatever humanity is at. Like, let's just take marathon running. 6'2" white dudes are not going to run very good marathons. We want Kenyans, black Kenyans, who are like definitely engineered to be much better than us. The point of
we can
want
engineer
all this diversity out there so that it leads to this greatness as a whole in a multitude of fronts. That's why diversity is beautiful.
Wait, I'm super confused. If you could do gene editing and make the blonde hair, so we're gonna, I'm guessing we're gonna go for what you just said was the most appealing and the best of the human beings. So we take all the attractiveness levels, we take all of the various factors, right? We make these people just as strong as those Kenyan marathon runners, right? But visually, we make them as appealing as possible. And what we come up with is blonde-haired, blue-eyed Ubermenches who can accomplish the same thing that these other racial demographic groups can, right? What is actually immoral or unethical about that from your worldview? What?
It's just not practical. It's not functional. It's not going to work.
But
humanity is not just like one goal.
But is it unethical?
Look, my goal is to accomplish. Listen, I'm going to give you an answer. My goal is to accomplish the most for humanity. And right now, that requires a diversity of people to do so. So having just a bunch of 6'2" white guys isn't going to cut the thing. Maybe if it's a space mission and you need a certain type of person and everyone has to be the same, that would be fine. But we're not talking about, we're talking about humanity as a whole.
Is it unethical to do for a bunch of gene scientists to get together and decide that they're going to make the Ubermensch and they function at the highest capacity of humanity? They just all happen to cosmetically be the most visually appealing people, and they decide that that's blonde-haired, blue-eyed men at about 6'2" to 6'3", and blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan princess women. That's what they decide. Can you tell me? Hang on. I want a yes or no. Is that unethical?
I'm not going to answer a question that's totally impractical. I'm running for governor.
Wait.
Christ's sake, you know what I mean?
What does the practicality have to do with it? Is it unethical or not?
I'm telling you, like, it's not a question that's realistic. You can ask a bunch of questions. Why don't you ask me how,
is it
how does 2 + 2 = 5?
Is it unethical or isn't it?
Listen, That's not the way the world works, man. It's not going to be just a one group of people reaching one thing. It's like a coalition of many people.
Unethical, or isn't it unethical?
I don't answer questions like this.
You don't? No, why not?
Because I'm running for governor.
Ah, I see. So,
and I believe in a diversity of people moving forward through the transhumanist future.
So,
and you're asking a question that is like, designed to trap me, but it's not good. It's not a good
It's a great question.
It doesn't get to the core of where we're going.
It's right to the core of it. You have conflicting human beliefs and human biases, which prevent you from answering this question honestly, because here's the honest answer for you. The honest answer is actually yes, it's ethical, right? From your worldview. Just be honest with me. Isn't it actually ethical to do that from your worldview? Isn't it?
No, it's not. My worldview involves so many different things that we have to do, and that's going to require different types of people, different types of races, different types of ethnicities and IQ levels.
So it's unethical.
Different types of wildlife, animals, everything.
So then it's unethical for people to get together and do that.
No. What we need is diversity so that we can all rise up. You're trying to trap me in a question.
Well,
I'm definitely not going to say it on camera.
A contradiction is you can't have A and not A. So if I ask you if a thing is ethical or not ethical, you can't say it's both ethical and not ethical. That would be a logical contradiction. A and not A. So, sir,
I'm not answering that question whether it's ethical or non-ethical at all.
Why not? What are you so
scared of? It's not
a
question that even applies to how transhumanism works.
It exactly applies to how transhumanism works.
You're asking me 2 + 2 = 5. I can't make 2 + 2 = 5 work.
We want to do whatever it is that we want to do, man. And the thing is like within that confines of the 20%, if a bunch of genome scientists get together and make the Ubermensch and make designer babies, and they're all 6'2", and they're all Aryan, they're all blonde hair, they're all blue-eyed, and they all have the same strengths and characteristics of other people. They're just the most visually appealing from their preference, arbitrary preference base. What are they actually doing wrong from your view? Are they doing anything wrong or unethical?
You know why AI hallucinates? It's because things don't go that way. It's not like perfect mathematics. It's crazy out there. It's chaos. And we need chaos when we're talking about genetic editing and designer babies.
Bad faith evasion. Is it unethical for these people to have an arbitrary metric that they come up with within the jumble of 20? We got to try everything, man. It's fine to have fucking men who can get pregnant and have kids, but man, if we start talking about genetically altering people so they're blonde hair, blue eyed, that's really crossing a line, right?
Last one, guys, then we'll go into closings.
Come on, man. Just be honest with me. It's totally fine, right? Totally
it's not a logical question for me.
It's a logical question for you.
Maybe it has some logic, but it's not realistic.
Man babies are realistic, but you can't.
You're trying to trap me into saying something
how is it not realistic?
That I just simply don't believe in, and I just don't. Realistic? It's not ever going to happen.
What's unrealistic for me?
There are 8 billion people on planet Earth. It's never going to be like that.
Yeah, what's unrealistic? Never. What is unrealistic about a person who wants and select groups of people who want only to have, through genetic editing, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, super strong, super high IQ children through the gene editing process?
Well, some people may choose that. Some people may say yes, but I'm not going to.
If whole countries choose that, that's fine, right?
That would sound stupid to me. A whole country would choose that. It just doesn't make sense. There's 8 billion people on planet Earth. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, hang on. There's 8 billion people, not in one country. The Japanese are very ethnocentric, for instance. If the Japanese decided that they were going to do nothing but gene editing to make sure that everybody stayed uniquely Japanese within their view of what that is, right? Is that good? Is that fine? Is that okay or not? Is that okay or not okay? Is it ethical?
I don't think it's okay. It makes no sense from a Japanese point of view.
Why not?
Believe me, they would never do that. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Is like the question itself. I would never do that.
Now suddenly we need to break all barriers and everything's on the table, but people would never do that.
No, it's not all barriers. It's just this question doesn't make sense. It's like there's 8 billion of us. It's going to take 8 billion reasons.
We could pop a uterus in a man. He could shit a baby out. But let's not talk about cosmetic changes that people would have for beauty standards.
We can talk about it, but just not for the entire human race.
I didn't say the entire human race. I said country specific. You don't think that there's Eastern European countries that would want to have nothing but blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies who look like the Ubermensch? Is that unethical for them to do or not?
I think it's stupid for them to do.
Is it unethical for them to do?
Well, I don't know that answer. If it's stupid, then you don't know the answer.
Stupid. You don't know if it's unethical or not. Okay.
All right,
it depends. If you consider stupid as unethical, yes.
It's a good time to get on
doesn't
to the
seem to be something
closing
anyone would want to do.
statements now. So let's do that. Zoltan, you
Men would want to
up,
have
so
babies, but
so
nobody,
Andrew,
you couldn't conceive of people wanting to cosmetically change what
Andrew,
their
if
babies
you
look
want to
like.
jump in with your closing statement, 2 minutes, and then we're going to read some super chats opening. Orange and up. So Andrew, 2 minutes, closing statement. Let's go.
Yeah, first and foremost, let me thank my opponent for this debate. So it takes a lot of courage to debate your worldview. It really does, especially in front of thousands of people live. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And so first and foremost, I do thank you for having this debate with me. Secondly, he's a contradiction machine. This is what I'll say in my closing. He contradicts himself often. You saw the last exchange that we have. You know what the answer is, right? The answer is yes, it's ethical. He knows it's ethical. However, he's in a political pincer because he's running as a Democrat in California, right? He knows for sure that if he answers yes on blonde hair, blue-eyed Ubermensch babies and that being fine within his worldview, the very people who he's trying to represent are going to call him an evil Nazi eugenicist. That's actually what's going on. And the thing is like I have compassion for that. I'm not upset by the fact that he's trying to be evasive in the answer because he's in a political pincer. And the thing is, though, is that's a political pincer of your making. The whole identity politics thing and stuff like this, it's all perpetuated by the same exact technology you want no guardrails on as you appeal to my worldview in order to stop you from doing crazy things. The biggest thing that you got out of this debate is this, that he adopts most of my worldview, adopts most of my ethical system, and then he tries to carve out the parts that he doesn't like. He carves out the portions of my ethical system which would prevent horrific things from happening to people, but can't justify it himself. There is no Christ he's appealing to. There is no God he's appealing to. There is no justification he's appealing to outside of himself. Every time we try to get to what he's appealing to, it's consensus. What if consensus say we can have designer Ubermensch babies? Well, that's just impossible. But, of course, having men who have children, totally possible. It's like over and over and over again, as we dive into this worldview, we realize that really it's completely and totally reliant on my worldview, not his at all. He's actually asking Christians for permission more than anything else to pursue these diabolical arts. And what makes them diabolical is simple. There's no justification he can give for why you ought to do any of this other than your own personal preference. And then, but unless we get to preferences you have, which aren't politically expedient, then, I don't know about those things, right? This is, and so I have no choice but to believe, based on the last question exchange, that he's actually hiding many of his true intentions. Why? The last question exchange that we just had, he was completely evasive on it. He was terrified to give his intentionality behind these things and say that this is ethical, unethical, or whatever, even though the rest of the conversation, he had no issues doing that, simply for the purposes of political expediency. And it's like, look, from my view, it just seems like you are very, very reliant upon Christians doing a lot of your heavy lifting, while at the same time having a criticism that they're somehow holding you back. And yet it's our ethical guardrails that make any of this possible to begin with for you. So,
all right, 3 minutes on the clock for you, Zoltan.
Well, first, Andrew, thanks so much for doing the debate. It's been awesome. Actually, I've been really enjoying it. Jake, thank you for hosting this. Let me just first say that transhumanism, this social movement of trying to use all these radical technologies to upgrade ourselves, is really something that is not just deep to me, but deep to many, millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world, especially where I live near Silicon Valley. We are really trying to remake planet Earth and remake what it means to be a human being. And that's perfectly justifiable, perfectly morally okay. And it's totally morally okay to take 80% of the Judeo-Christian framework that's out there, that's enabled a lot of modern scientists and modern history to kind of do what it's doing right now, which is provide these incredible technologies, this ability to even do this debate online through the airwaves or wherever you guys are. I'm in, California. These things are part of that Judeo-Christian framework, but it has its limits. And as human beings, we have to bend outside those limits sometimes. That's where that 20% comes from. I'm willing to go somewhere where no one's gone before. And so are all my peers. We want to see what else can be done to the human body. We want to see what else can be done to the human experience. And that means one day men giving birth or putting our brains into machines. maybe we'll do it. It's not going to happen today, but it's something that I'm willing to entertain and say there could be a moral fabric for it. And we could find new truths and new rules that are even better than we've had before, better than the Judeo-Christian framework than we've had. And I got to just say, regarding the last 10, 15 minutes, when it comes to kind of what we're discussing, it's absolutely okay to, again, stretch rules of morality and ideas, what we're wanting to discuss. But you're talking about with, eugenics, trying to bring me into this fold. And yes, I am running for governor, so I'm a little bit more careful. But there are 8 billion people out there making decisions, and we want everyone to have at least some say. And so you can't just say, oh, we're all just going to choose one type of person to become transhuman, and that's the person that's going to be the best. It's never going to be like that. It's going to go back and forth and here and there, and it's going to be a coalition. And that's what's made evolution possible, is borrowing from the strong parts, leaving behind the weak parts. And I do believe Christianity has some weak parts. The biggest weakness for Christianity for me is that I don't believe in God. And that's a problem for me. I've tried to believe in God. I want God to come in my life, but I can't see it. I can't know it. I can't feel it. And that's always been a dilemma for me. So I'm going to take the best parts of the social framework and leave that other part behind. And I'm going to apply it to transhumanism and move forward. And I think we can come to a point when we really become something quite different than what we are now, but still be the best in ourselves, the best that we've taken from the past. And if that means being transhuman and leaving behind a lot of the humanness that I have, that's fine for me. I'm looking forward to that future.
All right, fellas. Well, it's been a great debate. It's been a good old-fashioned pub fight, bar stool debate. I felt like
those are the best kind.
I know. I've really enjoyed it, actually. So we're going to get into some super chats. I'm gonna speed through them, and we're not going to too long on any one, because I just want to make sure that everyone who donated gets to have their question read. So Gravios comes in and said, I have a question for Zoltan. How would he feel if he didn't eat breakfast this morning? And did he eat breakfast this morning? Otherwise, good show, great debate. So how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning? And did you eat breakfast this morning?
That's an interesting question, because I had, after a few scotches last night, a little bit fourth dinner, and I punished myself this morning by not having breakfast. So, and I do that sometimes. If I drink and then have a midnight snack, I don't eat breakfast. So I didn't really have much to eat. But I got to say that in the future, I'm hoping that eating won't necessarily be something we always have to do. Maybe it'll be fun sometimes, but it really bothers me that you can go 10 or 20 days without food and die. That presents a problem in the transhumanist mindset. The same thing with water. The fact that you can't go 2 or 3 days without liquid and then you die presents a problem to transhumanists.
It's an interesting spin on
but
the
I mean, you have
question.
to remember the biblical standard here, that God doesn't mind what goes in your mouth, and we're talking about food and water here, he minds what comes out of it. And so these are not contradictory positions to Christian ethics at all. Who cares if you're able to eliminate people needing to eat solid food or something like this? This doesn't violate anything. The violation comes in when you said, what about, I'm gonna take your ethical system and carve out and only keep the 20% that I don't like. So I just do the same thing. Okay, well, I'll take your transhumanism stuff and I'll just carve out all the stuff I don't like. In this case, I don't like you creating these death machines or having no moral oughts or any of these things. Just carve out the things I don't like. It's the same. You see how the standard's the exact same both ways? Like, how are you going to critique me for the same thing that you're appealing to? It's just wild to me.
All right, next one comes from Mighty Maximus. Says Andrew just referenced Resident Evil. This is going to be great. Oh,
that's true. It is one of my. I'm sorry, I did make a video game reference. I think that culture, when you disseminate ideas, disseminating them through cultural references helps frame what it is that you're trying to say to people. So I did. That is true. I used the Umbrella Corporation Resident Evil reference in the beginning. I thought it framed up the argument fairly well.
Actually Religious for 20 says, this is the most offensive thing I've ever heard. The reason is to become your own God. You'd see parents/grandparents putting themselves ahead of their progeny. Why have kids if you're going to live forever? Sick. Zoltan, what would you say about that?
Yeah, sure. And this is a huge question. In fact, I got to be honest, a lot of transhumanists that I know and a lot of real extreme longevity advocates don't have kids for this exact reason. I chose to have them because I want to hedge my bets. But and I also think that even if you are going to live forever, Having children would be wonderful, and I would love to see them grow and do whatever they're going to do forever. I mean, in fact, I think if you love your child and you don't believe in an afterlife like me, then you want them to live as long as possible, forever, hopefully. So, but I just point out that many transhumanists don't have kids for exactly that very wise question.
I just want to point out to you, though, that idea was explored by J.R.R. Tolkien. He called them elves. And it was the idea was explored a long time ago, and it ended up with disastrous results for a reason.
Sniper Bike sent 5 memberships. Thank you, sir. Imperial Cantina for 20 said, question for Zoltan. Is there a ship of Theseus point with transhumanism, where if you replace enough human parts with non-humans, that it stops being a person, and is it just an AI robot mimicking human life? Cheers, Jake.
Sure. Well, I would say most transhumanists say when you have crossed the 50% threshold, so when you've replaced over 50% of your body, you no longer should be theoretically called a human being. Like, so I have a chip implant in my hand, but that's just like a tiny percent, a quarter% of my body. However, when you've done over half, then I would say you have become something that is no longer part of the species. However, you probably still, as I've argued, retain your memories, retain your mammalianness and all that. And if that's in your brain, then you may still feel you're very human, even if you are entirely a cyborg or even a brain in a vat at some point.
But you see how arbitrary this is? Totally arbitrary. Like, what makes it at 50%? Which 50%, for instance? Like, if you get cut in half and the entirety of the bottom half of your section becomes robotic, are you now not a human being anymore? I think you could make an easy argument that you are still indeed, in fact, a human being, and that this doesn't get to the core of what the ontology of a person is, the very being of a person. It's another arbitrary starting position, and there's no reason for us to grant any of these arbitrary starting positions. They're arbitrary.
So Andrew is right here in this sense, and maybe I should clarify. That 50% has to be done electively. You would have to say, oh, I want to take away 50% of my body and replace it. You can't have an accident happen to you, because then I would say you're fully still human.
What? Wait, what? That's absurd. That's you just based on subjective identitarianism, just like subjective identity. I'm a human because I claim I'm one. Humanity has a biological and ontological meaning. It's not one or the other. These are very much intertwined. It's not just biology. It's not just the idea of the thing and what makes that thing, right? It's both of these things considered together.
I think it's perception.
You say, wait a second, you could just identify. Okay, well, then I'm a robot right now, right?
Yes, but we do identify. So look, if you chop off both your arms, you put in a robotic heart, I mean, this is it. You know, people like us transgenders, we identify, and that's okay.
Am I a robot right now because I say I am? No, of course not. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You basically would have to be lying to me, right? If I said I'm a robot and you said, yes, you are, you would be lying, objectively lying.
Replacing 50% of your body, that would be hundreds of surgeries.
That's
so at that point, after hundreds of surgeries, replacing limbs and hearts and organs, I would say that, look, you may qualify as whatever you want to call yourself. That's a different thing than you just saying right now, I'm a robot.
No, it's the same thing. It's you using arbitrary metrics in order to create identities which are fictional. What's the proof you're not human anymore? Again, it's just an arbitrary starting position because I just don't think you are. Right? It doesn't not make you human anymore. These ideas,
if you have major organs that you have electively taken, I would say that constitutes something that goes beyond being a human being. When you're talking 50%, I mean, and you said this earlier. You said like your biological body actually gives you a sense of who you are. So if you replace 50% of it, we should start calling that something different.
No, I don't think we should. For instance, and here's why it doesn't hold up to scrutiny, because if I say, okay, I give you my heart and my lungs and my this and my that electively so that they're replaced with some kind of mechanical devices. Okay, now you're not a human, or you can at least elect to not be one. But if I'm in a tragic car accident and all of these things are replaced mechanically, now suddenly I am still human. You see how arbitrary that metric is? It makes no sense.
Well, that's why I said the decision-making process is very important. It's like if you electively do that, you say, look, I want to replace half my body. That's a huge part of it.
Yeah, but you're just making stuff, right? The whole thing is now just made up. If mechanically it's all replaced through no fault of your own, now you're still a human. But
this is sort of the transgenderism issue as well.
Exactly,
the transgenderism issue
you're right. You're
But,
right.
you know,
We made up. It's self-ID.
we people believe that. We believe you can judge it. But this is different. This is not just saying, oh, I'm changing my sex one day. This is saying I'm literally taking away 50% of my body after hundreds of surgeries and saying, look, I'm something different than being a human being.
Plenty more
Somehow, if the
interesting
same thing
questions.
happens through sheer accident, now you're still a human. That makes no sense, dude. That makes zero sense.
Plenty more interesting questions here, guys. Mighty Maximus came in and said, for Jake's amazing moderation, even though he's playing in the chat, it was a tough night at the office for me, guys. Really, really tough moderation for me tonight.
We're both big boys. I don't think this debate devolved past issues and got into like personal insults and stuff like that. We didn't do any of that.
It was great. Yeah. For the mods, for the chat, Mighty Maximus, thanks for all the 20s. I appreciate that. For being Monday, and one more. Thank you, sir. Kikomo came in with 20. Thank you very much, Kikomo. Appreciate that. H-Man said, if transhumanism is simply about the individual living longer and the methods by which vary with each individual, then how could you argue against transhumanist worldview that only allows for one individual at a time?
Can you repeat the question? Broke up a little.
If transhumanism is simply about the individual living longer and the methods by which vary with each individual, then how could you argue against a transhumanist worldview that only allows for one individual at a time?
Well, transhumanism is literally the philosophy of total individual liberty. You can do whatever you want. In fact, our ideology, kind of the crux of it is really, you should be able to do with your body whatever you want to do, as long as it's not hurting somebody else. And that's kind of we call that morphological freedom. It's the foundation of what transhumanism is. So when we talk about like making decisions, we always bring it right back to the individual. So long as it's not hurting somebody or society like that, it's got to be that. So that's the reason we kind of stick with this individuality of transhumanism. That said, obviously, and I know Andrew would say, I have a lot to say on this. There's a lot in terms of society and how things can go off the rails, whatnot. But we want to believe from a very deep libertarian perspective, and transhumanism started as a libertarian idea, that we can make decisions on the very most autonomous, individualistic level.
Yeah, but the answer to the question directly is that would be a consistent worldview. That, it would be, you couldn't deny within if transhumanism is simply the individual living longer, whatever methodologies that they decided to come up with on only an individual level, there's only one immortal and that's me, would still be consistent within his worldview. That's the actual facts of the matter, at least for consistency's sake, right?
I don't agree with that. I think there would be other, if it was my child, I'd still like give up my life for my child. So I think we'd still hold a bunch of those mammalian beliefs, even if we are individualistic at the very core.
Yeah, but we've already determined that we can't really select out any of these mammalianistic beliefs or mammalian beliefs or mammalian, ideals or the way that we act, because when put to the question, you still defer to some ethical standards in which these should stay and these should go, and they're just completely arbitrary, just arbitrary metrics come up with out of complete nothing, just arbitrary, just based on a personal preference and arbitrariness. There's no system for it, nothing.
Andrew, there is the system. The system is I don't want to die, and the system is I love life, and we use the scientific method to base everything off from there. And because we're carrying mammalian instincts with us, which kind of form in line with what I just said, we're going to be nice to other people. That's why we wouldn't take a soldering iron in someone else's, in a child's eye. It's just not going to be within that. We're still going to follow the golden rule, even if we become like supernovas traveling the universe.
But all of those starting positions are arbitrary in nature. To start with these suppositions as being in some way true, or we ought to do them or something like this, is already presupposing and baking into the pie this as a starting position. And that is where the arbitrary nature of it comes in. I understand that we start with, I want to be immortal. That's what we're starting with. I want to be immortal. But that is arbitrary in and of itself. There's no grounded justification for why we ought to be immortal.
But loving life, loving life is different than wanting to be immortal. Loving life means that you love everything around you, including your children, your friends, your tribes, your country. So, I mean, it's deeper than I think you're giving credit for.
Well, Christianity has those things built in as well.
And that's why we've taken it
love
from
of
you.
Life,
we've taken
love
it
of
from
all
you.
of this, you know what I mean?
And we've taken it from, we've taken that 80%.
Every worldview that I've ever come into contact with, which is uniquely Westernized, in this case, transhumanism, which is a uniquely Western, and some Eastern Bloc philosophers who who push this. But you're right, the libertarianism has popularized it. They all basically borrow from Christians, because that's what informed all of their ethics. They just come up with these starting positions and then pretend that they're unique, but they never justify any of them, right? The truth is like, why should we want to be immortal? You then say, well, if it's the case that you want A, B, and C, then you should want to be immortal. But that's tautological. You should want it because if you want it, you want it. That's why you want. You know what I mean? It's a complete tautology. It's not grounded in nothing.
You're making a huge issue of things being arbitrary, but we hold them as core policies moving forward. We're not going to abandon them unless we find better policies. And that's just how the scientific method imbues our kind of worldview. So I think it's okay that we took your 80%. That's the core of our goal, or I guess our mantra right now. It may be disposed of later, but we hold lots of very similar views to you at the core of our part. It may be more arbitrary than your umbrella of God, but at the same time, it's not like we're going to leave it behind in one day just because it doesn't work for us. If it works, we're going to keep it.
But do you see how this justification puts us? You can't actually put your ought above anybody else's. And so if people, and Christians especially, reject transhumanism, you have no ought to tell them why they shouldn't. You have no oughts to give them, because you're just saying, I uniquely start at an arbitrary starting position for no good reason.
Yes.
That's
you
it.
are totally right here. We have no oughts. And that's the whole thing about liberty with transhumanism is I don't want to tell people what they are, what they want to do. I just want to be like, look, the goal
unless it comes to designer Ubermensch
let's
babies.
move forward.
Unless it comes
I don't
to
want to tell you what to believe.
Yeah, unless it comes to designer Ubermensch babies, and you can't make an ethical claim there. Or when it comes to burning out the retinas of a baby, now suddenly you have objections. It's like you have tons of oughts, right? And
yes,
the thing is,
well, when it breaks the golden rule,
come up with them on your own. You just can't come up with them on your own. You have to literally appeal to the very worldview in which you're trying to defy. It's just baffling to me.
And we're grateful to have taken that 80% from you.
Kikomo says for the Hinge Premium Fund, which I appreciate because I was all out of swipes. Anthony says, if you were to have a baby, where would it come from? Would it be delivered by an AI stork to your doorstep? Now, did we get to this guy? Like, did we ascertain that it would be a butt baby, or would
it would be C-section? So come on, I mean, if it's even in a human being, it'd probably be more in a robotic baby or an artificial womb.
Right, yeah, an artificial womb is a much more likely potential future.
Yeah,
but of course, for you, you want to have a baby yourself. How would that
I want to
work?
feel it growing inside me. I think that'd be wonderful.
Okay, Norwegian Dan says a real KO would be to run the transcript of this debate through Grok after the conclusion of the stream, asking for AI to conclude the winner, just to find out Andrew crushed it. Well, if anybody wants to do that, definitely let me know the results. JD Jeffries says, what purpose does entropy serve in the Christian worldview? In the transhumanist worldview, how can entropy be conquered, and wouldn't that prove the likelihood of a God who existed prior to entropy? So maybe first of all, Andrew, what purpose does entropy serve?
Yeah, I don't hyper focus. I'm not a Christian apologist. I'm a political debater, and I don't hyper focus on the question of entropy. There are some good Christian apologists who tackle this idea, but it's not what I came here to debate.
Zoltan?
Yeah, I would caution that entropy is something that we think we know, sort of like a flat Earth 300, 400, or 500 years ago, whenever. I bet we'll find something that opposes entropy here moving forward in the next few hundred years. So I think the idea that the universe is disintegrating some way might be just what we believe now, but we'll find other much more complicated physics of what's really happening in the universe. I mean, our eyesight, for example, can only see 1% of the universe at the moment. And even our robotics are still not getting huge things with the God particle and black holes and things like that. Let's just wait 100, 500 years to make sure that entropy really exists.
All right. Anthony says, our wise and powerful leader, Zoltan, are we going to finally accomplish our prophecy of intergalactic travel?
Yes. So, just let me throw in a little bit something with my gubernatorial run. One of the big things we are trying to do with California is I mean, and I'll be honest, the Dems have ruined California, even though if I'm running as one, they have just literally, all the space industry has gone to Texas and Florida and now to even Colorado. So I would love to bring that all back. I'd love to have the Star Trek age start here in California. I'd love to have Starfleet build new bases, reduce taxes, give state land to these companies that they can do it. Why not have California lead the way forward with the Star Trek era? It's a shame that we have. So, and just so your audience knows, we're now sending almost daily satellites or rockets up into space. So we really are at the cusp of this age. And so transhumanism is not just about, upgrading ourselves here for planet Earth. It's really about making ourselves better for getting off around the universe and getting kind of to the intergalactic type of travel. So I'm a big, big fan of that. It's a big part of my gubernatorial campaign.
It's also nonsense. We're nowhere near intergalactic travel, not even close, not even in the same. We can't even go back to the moon. Okay, it's ridiculous to say we're on the cusp of any of these technologies. We're not. We're not even on the cusp of reclaiming our 1960s technology that got us to the moon, and yet we're on the cusp of intergalactic travel. You see what I mean by the sensationalism, which is nonsensical on its face.
Andrew, you're watching these giant robots land on.
I didn't interrupt you at all. Sorry. Hang on, I didn't interrupt you. Let me finish, and then you can tangle with it. Okay. We don't have the quote 1960s technology to get back to the moon, to put men on the moon again. We don't even have that. Elon Musk has not put us back on the moon with all of his technocratic prowess and the advanced rocketry of this age. And we're on the cusp of intergalactic travel. It's absurd. That's one. The second thing to point out is you want a Star Trek-like future to start in California. The reason California's bankrupt and all the business is leaving is because of the high exorbitant tax rate. And you want to institute a UBI. Do you think that's going to help with business? That's insanity. It's not going to incentivize businesses to come in. You're going to tax them at a higher rate to give people a universal basic income. Like, these things make no sense, dude. They don't make any sense.
Well, look, artificial intelligence is absolutely going to devastate the job market. It's already happening here in Silicon Valley. If we don't do something like that, there are going to be people rioting all over the place. They're going to need basics, food, healthcare, and shelter. Universal basic income covers that. But let me just say, look, I'm in the privy with a lot of people in the space industry. We are already, they're not talking about it much, but there are plans in the works to go to Mars probably within 2 to 4 years. So no one wants to go to the moon anymore. It's just kind of pointless. We have absolutely the better technology than we did 20, 30, 40 years ago. And we're going to start getting into our own solar system here literally within a decade's time, not just Mars, other planets as well. And start doing some space industry stuff too, bring in trillions of dollars of materials and stuff like that. It's all about to happen. Believe me, I've just been in kind of cahoots with a lot of people that are investing in this future. It's all going to happen in the next few years.
Spend $1 trillion to go up and mine an asteroid and bring back 1 million. The thing that's so funny about this is that this has been investigated ad nauseum by futurists. And to say that going back to the moon is something which is a trivial pursuit in comparison to Mars, no. If you were to have a lunar base, your trip to Mars would be much easier, wouldn't it? The thing that's so funny here, and that cracks me up, is let's start with that. Let's start with actually having a quote moon base. Let's start with actually getting people back to the moon. Let's start with any of these things first before we start giving people the illusion that we're going to have manned Mars missions and Mars colonies. For what purpose? For what purpose would you want that over the moon? What would the purpose be? It's so silly to me.
The same purpose for transhumanism, the same purpose. We just want to see, we're curious. We want to get off planet. It's great. I want to go to Mars, not for just going to Mars, just because it's super cool. And this is the same reason about having a man give birth to a child. You don't actually need a reason to do it. It just could be cool because you want to do it.
Yeah, Andrew, would you go to Mars if you could?
Sure, I'd love to see Mars. I think that's great. But that has. Do you realize though that has no bearing on what I'm arguing here? The argument is not whether or not I'd love to go and see Mars or go and see the moon. I think that would be great. I would love to have manned spacecraft that you could fly out there and take a look at these things. I'm not against any of that. I would like to experience it myself. That has no bearing at all on the argument, though, as to whether or not we're anywhere near the technologies to be able to do these things, which Musk has been promising for 20 years, and we're nowhere closer, really. His rockets still explode in the air. There's no other private industry which is any closer than Musk is in any of these rocket technologies that I'm aware of. And ultimately, we've been being promised these things by futurists for an awful long time, and they can't even get us back to the moon. They're promising you now Mars and warp travel. It's like, come on, man, give us a break here. Come on.
All
Like,
right, next
at
one.
what point are we supposed to be like, yeah, I don't think so?
We got to move on here. Rachel Wilson. Now, we are doing Orange and Up, guys, but we have Wilson privilege here. So move forward to what? She says, okay, you've achieved immortality. What are you going to do for the rest of eternity, and for what reason? How many psychedelics have you done, Zoltan?
I've done plenty of psychedelics, to be honest. Peyote, mushrooms, acid, everything. But
very typical.
Beyond that, I think, first off, when we say immortality, as a transhumanist says immortality, we don't mean it in the sense like forever. We mean it in the sense like, wouldn't it be nice to live 500 years to start with? And then let's see how radical the technology is that transforms the world and transforms our existence. Then we might go to like 5,000 years or 10,000. So I agree with you. Living forever would be very weird, or the idea of it. But I also think the Earth would probably, and the experience would always be changing and evolving. So things would be new. We wouldn't get bored. So I could easily see living hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years. But again, talking about immortality, we don't really mean it in the sense of forever. We mean in the sense of, let's just overcome biological aging and death as we see it right now.
All right. David gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, sir. And Farrier1 says, I'm sorry if this is the 10th time I've asked. What 20% of Christian ethics are you rejecting as bad? What in Christian belief, ethics, morals need your beliefs to be inserted so humans can evolve as you imagine?
It's a good question.
So the bottom line is that when you look at human history, you have to take what's happened in the past. And let's be honest, the Judeo-Christian ethic has been the framework for how Western man has evolved and how I've evolved, all the way back to the Greeks and, through all of history in the last 2,000 years, especially the Enlightenment. We take it, and it's just part of what's brought us to where we are. We don't actually need it. I just think it's why we've evolved the way we are, and we've chosen to keep it. And I choose to live by it every day. I mean, in fact, I mentioned the golden rule, which is kind of Jesus's, golden rule. I mean, I guess other cultures and religions have brought it up, but I mention it because I find it as the very best method for living and going about my life, as well as moving the transhumanism movement forward. So, it's not more, why are we taking it? It's because it's so useful and so good. Again, the 80% is, then there's 20%, as Andrew is arguing, that I just don't think would just be holding us back. We don't need it to guide us. We need more freedom than that.
The golden rule, as it exists, that you have adopted, has a precursor to it. Are you aware of the precursor to the golden rule?
Go ahead, Andrew.
I'm just asking, are you aware of the precursor to the golden rule?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't know one offhand, but I may know it.
It's love thy Lord God with all of your heart. So Jesus gives 2 additional commandments besides what you reference as the golden rule, which is to love thy neighbor as you love thyself. He gives a precursor to it. He says, I would say first to love thy God with all of your heart. The reason the golden rule exists, and the reason there's a precursor to it, that you must love the Lord God with all of your heart, is because the epistemology of Christianity itself, ingrained inside of our knowledge base itself, is that absent your ability to love God with all of your heart, you can't love yourself and you can't love your neighbor. That's why there's that precursor there. The reason your view doesn't work is because there is no precursor to this. There is no kind of, quote, preamble. It's just, you should just do that because you should do that, man. And it's like, that's why the framing of this in worldviews is so important. When people appeal to Christians, when they say you're supposed to love your neighbors, you love yourself, that's true. But the preamble there is that that's not even a possibility unless you love your Lord God with all of your heart. And that's the thing that you reject.
Andrew, it's a complete possibility to do that, the golden rule, to anyone without loving God or even knowing God. I just disagree with you wholeheartedly here. I think the golden rule applies to many cultures and many religions. And I think you can do so without loving God up front, because I do it and I don't love God because I never met God.
Yeah. So there's, but what's funny is I want you to realize that the reason that this doesn't work for you, the reason that when you reject this preamble, and you end up trying to fill this void with something else, in this case, transhumanism, you want to fill this void with some other telos, some other purpose, because you removed the purpose of what that meant, which was obedience and loving God with all of your heart. Without that, you can't, at least as far as our framework is concerned, you can't even begin to love yourself. Love yourself how? There has to be a framework and a commandment and a way in which that is done, or it's meaningless. What does that even mean? Same thing when you say love your neighbor as you love yourself. There are conditionals that need to be met so we know that you're actually loving your neighbor. It can't just be, oh, well, I love you, so I cut your leg off because I just didn't think you needed it anymore, but I still love you, right? There has to be conditionals that you ground these things in.
Well, in the transhumanism defense, these conditionals would be one's DNA and the mammalian instincts. It's like we do, you see an old lady across the street, most people go out and try to help her if she's fallen or something, just because we care. And we have this empathy. And I think that's built into all of us, whether or not you believe in God.
When at the same time, right, the reason that you follow those very ethics of assisting the infirm, in this case, the old lady, is because it's been ingrained from you from people who love their God with all of their heart. And so they then try to obey his commandments, and they pass those ethics to you. And those are the ethics you operate off of, while at the same time being spuriously dismissive of their origin. And it's like, the thing here is like, how do you know that that's an act of love? You have to base that in my worldview. You can't base it in your own. It just feels good. It just feels good.
Why can't I just have a natural DNA instinct, genetic instinct, to want to help an old lady who's fallen in the middle of the road? I can't. I agree with you. It is carried. The ethics have been carried.
Why can't I have a genetic instinct to push her down? Because I think it's funny.
Some people do have that, but I think majority of us don't. Majority of us are mammals.
But you can't appeal to the majority for your own standardized ethics, because when we make other appeals to the majority, like, is slavery good? You would still disagree with them, I suppose, right? If majority of people said slavery is okay, I suppose that you would say no, that's still not. And if that's the case,
I would do the right thing. I always do the right thing.
The right thing by my standards and metrics, though, and that's what's
no, the right thing by what is the scientific method, what feels right, and how I feel. So if I saw an old lady,
tell you slavery's wrong, it can't do it. It's impossible. No, it can't.
I think a lot of people felt it was wrong. They just don't.
That's not the scientific method telling you it's wrong. You're appealing to your emotions, which are grounded in nothing. If your emotion is to help the little old lady across the street, and my emotion is to push her down on the ground because I think it's funny, how do we arbitrate who's correct here if we're both basing it on mammalian instinct? The Christian's giving you the foundationalism of saying, look, we have a standard for what love is. And that's why we have a preamble. You must love God with all of your heart. And here's the conditionals for what that means. You don't have that. That's why the justification always comes back to me.
I have a sense of right and wrong based on what I'm trying to do at every moment.
Move on, guys. We have to move on. We got more questions.
Go ahead.
Actually, Religious says, Zoltan, if you turned yourself into a cyborg, how will you feel when you can't process breakfast?
Yeah, I'd probably be sad, especially drinking, because I do love drinking. So that would be tough for me. But I feel like those are some of the things you might give up. But again, you could probably program yourself to want to enjoy drinks and have maybe some type of internal organ, even if you are a cyborg.
Hey, it would be awesome if you could make a transhumanist pill that cured hangovers immediately.
Yes,
or like
yes.
Like a transhumanist, some kind of like implant that you just never get hungover again, but you experience all the fun of drinking. That would be great.
That would be
definitely.
I want one.
Point of agreement. Reverse massage, and I've actually been wondering this question as well, Zoltan. Did you ever find your continuum transfunctioner? It seemed awfully important to you.
No, but I do wonder about this. At Oxford, I didn't really, in my introduction, I kind of didn't say what I've been doing, but I am recently took my graduate degree at Oxford, and part of what I worried about and wrote about was simulation theory. And so I do think that sometimes I may already be uncovering things like this conversation is something that's already been predestined or preordained or something like that. And of course, that would work well with the Christian theology as well, maybe in some cases. But I haven't found it yet.
Do you ever get these "Dude, Where's My Car" like Zoltan references?
Yes, of course I do. And I've been grateful. Actually, it helps quite a bit with the campaign because people are like, love it.
That's awesome. All right, Crimson says, Zoltan, your whole belief system is based on hypothetical transhumanism. Transhumanism will most definitely cause suffering to the human experience. How will they improve the human body without experiment on them?
Yeah, unfortunately, they're probably going to have to experiment on some. But let's be honest, because of artificial intelligence coming here, they're already starting to do all these molecular discoveries in AI without actually doing them through human research anymore. And even some of the human trials are becoming less and less. So it's coming to this point where eventually we'll be able to simulate everything and probably cause a lot less suffering. Like I would be sort of against a lot of animal suffering on cosmetics and lipstick and things like that. And I think eventually we'll get to a point where we can use AI for almost everything to test and to figure out whether these experiments work.
Mr. E says, Zoltan, how many boosters have you had?
Tonight? No boosters today, but maybe, in the future.
Okay. Anthony says, Zoltan, I demand a new full body bubble wrap suit. I popped all my bubble wrap on my last one.
Sorry. They have to go to Home Depot and figure that out themselves. Sorry, we don't have our operations up yet. Zoltan.
David says, those who kneel before God can stand before anyone. Who do transhumanists kneel before, Zoltan? Also, Andrew, Rachel, and Jake love you all. Thank you, David. Who does they kneel before? I feel like the joke is writing itself. They kneel before Zoltan. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean, honestly, I think transhumanists often don't have mentors. They often don't have any kind of legacy. And this has been a central part of what Andrew and I have been discussing tonight and disagreeing on, is that we make our decisions based on what appears to be best for us at that moment, given our goals. But there's almost nothing except for the scientific method that we hold holy.
Right. Okay. And Zach Delpy, go on, Andrew.
I mean, the scientific method thing, that's also like philosophically, I could see good arguments for transhumanism that kind of they make sense. They're kind of hard to refute in some categories. I think that they're easy, most of them you can refute. But the point is like, when it comes to this idea of idolizing science, that's a simple methodology to give us descriptors of things which are happening. Science has never tried to engage with aughts or metaethics or any of that stuff. That's not what its purpose is. And so this idea that you can just appeal to science for answers of what you should or shouldn't do, even scientists don't make this claim. I mean, there's never been a claim that science is used for this because it can't. It's designed to utilize experimentation to give you descriptors of material reality, not what you should do with those things.
But I think the scientific method, especially in the way that I'm using it, is just really the idea that we test something, an outcome that we're trying to get. We find the very best outcomes based on whatever tests we did, and we go with that. And that's really the holy grail to us. And
yeah, but you see like the loaded words there of like best and greatest, or these types of things. These are philosophically loaded terms. What is best is not a thing science can answer at all, ever. It can only answer is. So are you hungry? Not whether or not
we would say whatever is most statistically functional for whatever goal we're trying to achieve. We would go with that, knowing that we might improve upon that here in the near future or the long-term future. But I mean, if you want me to use bigger terms.
If descriptively science said that elimination of 80% of humanity would lead to the other 20% living in a golden future and a golden age, and descriptively that would be true, you would still ethically oppose it. So, I mean, it can't be the golden standard here, right? It really can't be.
Well, I think you have to understand we're not, the scientific method sort of, at least in my opinion, comes after this foundational stuff, which is we're trying not to die, we're afraid of death, and we have mammalian instincts. And then we kind of apply these things. So I think the mammalian instincts would kick in and say, wait a sec, we need to find an alternative to killing 80% of the population or something of that nature. And so that's where I think the scientific method is really just this instrument, even if it is this holy instrument that leads us on our decisions. It's not that we always necessarily follow it. There can be plenty of times, like, you know, you would say, okay, well, Zolt's idea is to live forever, but he just said earlier he would give his life for his daughter. That doesn't make much transhuman sense. But that's where I'm still a human being. So I haven't actually made that transcendence yet. And I think that's important for transhumanism, as well as, you know, our discussion regarding Christianity, is transhumanists want the best that they can get in the future, but they're still very much humans. We haven't made this jump yet to being truly transhuman.
Yeah, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, Zoltan's going to run into a burning house to save his daughter. I applaud that, by the way. I consider that, from my view, to be a virtue, right? In fact, if Christians were there, I'm certain that they would assist. They would try to run in and help you do this, putting their life and limb, at risk for somebody who's a virtual unknown. This happens all the time. And by the way, atheists may do this as well, and other categories of people as well. But science can't tell you to do that. Science can only tell you that she's going to die from smoke inhalation. It can only tell you that fire is going to burn her. It can only tell you that the house is burning down. It can't tell you that you should go in and rescue the person who's burning alive, though. Do you see my point?
No, I see what you're saying, but I think science can tell you that, you know, you feel this way, this is happening, this is the best statistical choice. However, if your mammalian sense is contradicting it, then that takes priority. And these are all decisions that we make, you know, instantaneously in our head, even as we're discussing this with each other. So again, it's like the scientific method is not necessarily set in gold where I follow every single law it says, but I certainly use it all the time to push the transhumanism movement forward. But there are plenty of times when my sense of identity, being a mammal or just a father, step in. We're not, maybe in the future there will be a person that says, you know, I would do these what considered unethical things. I'm not there. I can't even imagine doing that.
But you're appealing to the very humanity that you're trying to transcend, you know, for your decision.
It is. I'm not even pretending to. It's not contradictory. There are plenty of contradictions. It's very contradictory that I take 80% of Christian ideas and leave the rest behind. And it is arbitrary. I was the first to say it. I'm
Sure.
lost. But the point is, this seems to be the best methodology that we have moving forward, almost like an evolutionary trait. We pull the best, we leave behind stuff that doesn't make sense, and we try to move forward as transhuman entities, striving to become something more than we are.
All right, last one here from Zach Galpy comes in and says, I'm confused. In the future, we can live forever and technology will advance. Humans will become cyborgs and won't need basics that humans need. Why would people riot to have the means for food and shelter and therefore need UBGs? Any danger in a bit of punctuation, Zach? Far out.
Sure.
Go
on. Let me just answer this, because this is very much what kind of others have been talking about. Elon Musk, our automated abundance economy. It's very possible here in the 10, 20-year future, with so much automation and maybe even becoming some cyborg parts, we would need a lot less housing, a lot less food, a lot less shelter. We wouldn't be immune to cold. It wouldn't need water all the time. Things like that. So yeah, I think in the transhuman future, everyone's going to be a lot wealthier, but it may not be through materialism as we perceive it now. It might just be because you are you're a home unto yourself, because your body is so much more protected. Like if, for example, you can get your arm crushed in a machine, but then you can regrow it, or you can have a robotic limb put on instantaneously. It takes the fear away of having arm crushed. So in the future, hopefully we'll be technologically superior, so life will be a lot simpler and easier to live, and we might not even need so many material possessions. I think it'll be a whole different level of wealth. It's some of the things we're promising in my gubernatorial campaign.
You know, interestingly enough, I tell this story a lot. You ever heard of the book The Population Bomb? I'm sure you have. Yeah. And it was completely false. The idea in the book was that people needed to curtail the population immediately, or they would consume so many resources that they'd stagnate their own populations and they would all die off. And they were predicting massive famine due to the hunger from so many different mouths to feed. In fact, what happened was the opposite based on this scientific consensus. When the world population exploded, logistics became possible in a very big way. And when logistics became possible, we're now able to feed more human beings than we ever have before, because the human labor doesn't just double with two people, right? It quadruples. and it magnifies out from there. That's why a small unit of military men can set up an entire encampment, a small city, in under an hour. Whereas one guy, it might take him 30 days or something like this. The idea is that labor expands the more human beings that there are. They were completely wrong. Every single time I see technological revolution supposed to take away jobs, it does the opposite. It, in fact, right now we have a labor shortage. We need more people because we're not birthing enough people. And we see this the computers were supposed to do this. They were supposed to revolutionize the idea of, hey, we're getting away from the typewriter now. In fact, that didn't happen at all. It just became more convenient to write more letters, right? Which needed more trees than cut down, which needed more paper mills and manufacturers. It didn't eliminate job. The technology, in fact, increases the need for more jobs. And so the idea for UBI has always been silly to me. Technological revolutions don't tend to contract jobs. They tend to expand them.
Might be an interesting debate for another day on UBI, actually.
I'm happy to do it.
Yes, I would love to. One of my favorite topics.
All right, a couple more here. David said, for a new flux capacitor for Zoltan, make sure he gets the funds for the new flux capacitor.
Thank you. Send them quick.
And in bed, not inbred said, will Zoltan be selling lewd posters if and when he loses the governor race? Is that on the menu?
Yes, OnlyFans is where I'm going.
You know what's really funny? Can I put an olive branch out here? Right. I actually hope that you win the governor race for California. I don't believe that it's possible that anybody can do a worse job than the current governor of California. So I actually do hope that you win. In fact, I wish that they would just walk down the street and point at a random person and make them governor of California. I think that person, whoever that person, I don't care if it's a 90-year-old Chinese lady, would do a better job than the current governor of California is doing. So I actually do wish you luck in this endeavor. You got my vote if I look there.
And let me just say, transhumanism, we don't mention the word transhumanism in our campaign because it throws off people. It's not part of really maybe a little bit of the space industry stuff, sure. But we really, in some extreme longevity stuff, but we just leave the transhumanism stuff alone. And I am, of all the candidates out there, pretty much the most, right-leaning on the left, because I come from a libertarian background. And that upsets a lot of Democrats, which is one of the reasons that it's been hard to catch on with the Democrats. We're actually catching on with those in the middle. And in fact, quite a few Trump people who left for Trump because they didn't want to vote for Kamala are now kind of supporting us. And I agree with you. Look, Gavin's done a terrible job. That's one of the reasons why I'm running. It's just like I have businesses. I'm an entrepreneur, and it's become impossible to run a real estate business in California anymore, which is one of the things that I've been doing. And I agree with you.
Best place in the entire world. There's no other place in the entire world than the area that you're in, the Bay Area. The most beautiful. The weather's always perfect. Even in the middle of winter, it's still nice to go outside and sit down in the 70-degree weather oftentimes, right? One of the most fantastic, nothing smells like that place either. From that Pacific Ocean, there's a certain type of breeze that you get there that's not present anywhere else in the world. And they fucking destroyed it. They destroyed it all. They wrecked it. They ruined it. It's the most god-awful tragedy of humanity, because that used to be paradise on earth.
I agree. California is no longer the Golden State. It's really ruined itself. And so there's a lot of us running now to really try to restore it. And I just happen to be kind of the most centric between the two different parties that are doing so. But any of your viewers, we appreciate the vote. Look at what we're doing. We're not talking crazy transhumanism stuff in our campaign. It's really just like, let's get back to business and try to get California back on.
Somebody said, well, wait a second. It gets cold. It's 58 in Sonoma County right now. Well, I was in Michigan, and it's
I'm freezing.
10.
I'm going to turn on the heater soon.
It's negative 10 in Michigan right now. So the thing is, it's like, no, man, that really was paradise on earth.
California, Whenever I've done that drive from LA up to Santa Barbara, it's really beautiful. It's an amazing scenery. And then you play the
you went down the coastal highway?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the coast. There's nothing else in the world like driving on coastal highway, man.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Place. Last one here. David said he has some hate for tomatoes. F tomatoes, just saying. So not relevant to the debate, but doesn't.
In the
like
transhumanist future, there will be no tomatoes.
No tomatoes.
You won't need
I will
to
take
eat.
them away.
That's right. Vote for me, and it'll be a tomato-free world, according to Zoltan.
All
Anyway.
right. Well, fellas, Zoltan, do you want to let everybody know where they can find you and your work and what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. My website, zoltanishwan2026.com. That's the campaign website. If anyone's interested, this is a book about Christianity and transhumanism. Check it out. It's a novel, so you'll have a lot of fun time exploring it. And yeah, thanks, Andrew, for having me. Thanks, Jake, for having me. This has been a really fun conversation. And I got to be honest, Andrew, I learned a ton about debating from you, which could be useful for later in some of the debates in the California gubernatorial race.
Yeah, the